In 1969, Ford's slick Torino Talladega ruled NASCAR, humbling Dodge's muscle with wind-cheating speed. That is when Dodge made a wild gamble. They hired a custom shop to transform the Charger into a 200 miles per hour missile with a monster wing and an Aero straight nose, hoping pure aerodynamics could outgun Ford's edge. It worked, on the track. But the strange part? The car that changed NASCAR history became a disaster for dealerships and a punchline in showrooms. So what forced Dodge into this desperate race? And how did one outrageous car rewrite the rules forever? Ford's Torino Talladega did not just win races in 1969, it dominated and embarrassed everyone else on the superspeedways. The Talladega's stretched nose and fastback roofline turned it into a missile on the banking, slicing through the air while Dodge's Charger fought drag like an open parachute. At Daytona and Talladega, Ford racked up win after win. David Pearson, driving for Holman Moody, took the checkered flag at the Motor Trend 500 and led a Ford sweep at the Daytona 500, where Leroy Yarborough's Talladega posted a pole speed of 190.7 miles per hour. Ford's new bodywork was not just for show, it delivered. 11 straight wins from late June through August, and 26 victories out of 54 races that season locked up the Manufacturers' Cup. Meanwhile, Dodge's best efforts fell flat. The standard Charger's upright grille acted like a brick wall at 180 miles per hour, and the recessed rear window created a vacuum that sucked away any hope of matching Ford's top-end speed. Trackside, the difference was obvious. Ford's cars shot down the straightaways, while Dodge drivers watched in frustration as blue ovals disappeared into the distance. The message was clear. Aerodynamics ruled the future, and Dodge's reputation was on the line. Rival engineers at Ford had thrown down the gauntlet with wind tunnel science, and every lap made Dodge's shortcomings more obvious. The pressure was on to find a solution, fast, before the Charger became a relic in Ford's rearview mirror. Dodge's boardroom in early 1969 felt more like a war room. The numbers were in, and the message was impossible to ignore. Ford's wind tunnel wizards had turned NASCAR into a science experiment, and Dodge was losing badly. Every lap behind a Talladega was a public humiliation. That is when the decision landed. Dodge would not just tweak the Charger, they would reinvent it from the ground up, no matter the risk or the cost. The official order went out to Creative Industries, a Detroit shop known for turning wild ideas into real sheet metal. Their assignment was not just a facelift. Dodge wanted a car that could break the 200 miles per hour barrier, a number that had been pure fantasy for stock cars. Creative Industries signed on, receiving a brief that called for radical solutions, anything to erase the Charger's drag and put Dodge back in the winner's circle. Internal memos from this period show the urgency. Dodge executives demanded results in months, not years. The engineering team was told to forget about showroom appeal. This was about speed, period. The project's timeline was brutal, with prototypes expected by the summer of 1969 to meet NASCAR's homologation rules. Creative Industries got to work shaping new body panels, running scale models through wind tunnels, and fabricating one-off parts that looked nothing like anything on the street. The gamble was enormous. Dodge was betting its reputation and millions of dollars on a car that might never sell a single unit to the public, all for a shot at reclaiming glory on the superspeedways. The contract with Creative Industries was clear: deliver a Charger that could run with Ford's best, and if possible, break the 200 miles per hour wall. The clock was ticking, and the future of Dodge's racing program depended on what happened next inside that Detroit workshop. Engineers at Creative Industries did not just slap a spoiler on the Charger and call it a day. They went for broke. A rear wing so tall it looked like it belonged on a lunar lander, not a muscle car. The math was simple. To beat Ford's Aero tricks, Dodge needed real downforce, and that meant getting the wing out of the turbulence behind the roof. The result was a 23-inch tall airfoil, perched high on two vertical struts, bolted straight through the trunk. This was not a styling exercise. At 180 miles per hour and above, air swirling off the roof becomes a chaotic mess, useless for making downforce. By lifting the wing into clean air, the Daytona pressed its rear tires into the pavement with authority, keeping the car stable through the fastest corners on the circuit. The mounting was pure function over form. Those struts were not just for show, they transferred the load right into the Charger structure, making sure every pound of downforce went straight to the rear axle. Teams could even adjust the wing's angle, dialing in more grip for tighter tracks or trimming it out for maximum speed on the big ovals. It was a science experiment with a wrench and a socket set. On the street, that towering wing blocked the entire rearview mirror and made parallel parking a game of blind faith. But at Talladega or Daytona, it turned the back half of the car into a suction cup, keeping the Charger glued to the asphalt while competitors tiptoed through the turns. For the engineers, it was not about looking cool, it was about harnessing clean air, building real downforce, and giving Dodge a weapon that could finally run with the leaders. The next piece of the puzzle sat up front, where a nose cone would take the fight to the wind. Fabricators at Creative Industries faced a tall order, literally. To solve the Charger's front-end drag, they sculpted a nose cone that stretched a full 19 inches ahead of the stock bumper. This was not just a cosmetic tweak. The new nose was built from lightweight fiberglass, shaped by hand to form a sharp aerodynamic wedge. The flush-mounted grille and hidden headlights erased the brick wall effect of the original Charger's upright face, letting air slip past instead of piling up and slowing the car down. Wind tunnel tests hammered home the difference. At 200 miles per hour, even a few inches of extra length up front translated to a dramatic drop in front-end lift. The Daytona's pointed nose pressed the car down onto the track, balancing out the rear wing's downforce and keeping the whole chassis stable through the fastest sections. For the first time, Dodge could attack the wind head-on, not just with brute force, but with science. But there was no hiding the trade-offs. Out on the street, the Daytona's nose arrived at intersections before the driver could even see cross-traffic. Parallel parking became a contact sport, and most garages were suddenly too short for the new front end. The hidden headlights, while slick at 200 miles per hour, meant fumbling with vacuum actuators just to drive at night. Still, every inch of that 19-inch extension paid off where it counted. The Charger Daytona was not just built to look fast, it was engineered to slice through the air, kill front-end lift, and finally let Dodge run with the leaders on NASCAR's biggest ovals. The rear window on the Charger Daytona didn't just look different, it was the final piece that made the whole Aero package work. On a standard Charger, the back glass sat deep in the body, creating a pocket where air tumbled and swirled at high speed. That turbulence didn't just slow the car down, it made the rear wing far less effective, robbing the car of the downforce needed to stay planted through Talladega's high banks. Chrysler's engineers knew the only way to clean up the airflow was to bring the glass flush with the roof and deck. So they built a new window cap, sealed tight to the body, and sent it through the wind tunnel. The results were immediate. Smoke tests and wool tufts showed air gliding straight off the roof, flowing smoothly across the new glass and onto the trunk. With turbulence gone, the Daytona's giant wing finally got the clean, undisturbed air it needed to generate real downforce. At 180, 190, even 200 miles per hour, the car pressed harder into the track, keeping the rear tires glued down while rivals struggled to keep their cars pointed straight. Wind tunnel numbers backed up what drivers felt on the banking. The flush rear window didn't just reduce drag, it amplified the wing's power, making the whole back half of the car work as a single aerodynamic system. Every tweak was measured, every change validated with data. By the time the engineers finished, the Daytona's drag coefficient had dropped to a staggering 0.28, a number that would make even modern sports cars jealous. The Charger Daytona was now more than just a brute in a wind tunnel. It was a rolling proof that science, not just horsepower, could win races. With the airflow puzzle solved, attention turned to what would push this bullet through the air, the engines under the hood. Under the Daytona's wild bodywork, Dodge did not settle for ordinary muscle. Every Charger. Daytona rolled off the line with a big block V8, either the 440 Magnum or, for the lucky few, the legendary 426 Hemi. The 440 Magnum was no slouch. 375 horsepower at 5,000 RPM, and enough torque to twist the drive shaft into a pretzel if you were not careful. Most Daytonas got the 440, backed by a heavy-duty 4-speed manual or the beefed-up TorqueFlite automatic, with reinforced rear axles built for the stress of high-speed running. But for engineers and racers, there was only one holy grail, the 426 Hemi. Rated at 425 horsepower and 490 pound-feet of torque, the Hemi was a race-bred monster, so tough that only 70 Daytonas got one. That number was not just a footnote, it made the Hemi Daytona the rarest of the rare, a unicorn even by Mopar standards. Mechanics who built these cars still talk about the extra bracing, the oversized cooling, the industrial strength driveline parts needed to keep the car together at 6,000 RPM for lap after lap. The Daytona's engines were not just about peak numbers, they were about surviving the violence of 200 miles per hour runs where a weak link meant disaster. With the engine bay sorted, the stage was set for Dodge to chase a number that had haunted NASCAR for years, 200 miles per hour. March 24, 1970, Talladega Superspeedway. Buddy Baker strapped into the cockpit of Charger Daytona, serial number DC93. The same car Dodge's engineers had spent sleepless nights perfecting in wind tunnels and on drafting tables. The goal was simple, but nobody had ever done it: break 200 miles per hour in a stock car. Mechanics swarmed around the Daytona, checking tire pressures, topping off the 426 Hemi with high-octane fuel, and taping over every gap that might cost a fraction of a mile per hour. The car's 23-inch wing towered over the trunk, slicing the humid Alabama air, while the 19-inch nose cone pointed straight down the endless front stretch. When Baker dropped the hammer, the Daytona howled out of pit lane and thundered onto the banking. Every eye in the grandstands locked onto the red and white missile as it built speed. The Hemi bellowed past 6,000 revolutions per minute. The car hugged the asphalt as if welded to it, wing and nose working together to keep the beast planted. On the back straight, the speedometer buried itself, and NASCAR's official timers watched the digital display blink, 200.447 miles per hour. For the first time in history, a stock car had cracked the 200 miles per hour barrier. Not in a wind tunnel, not in a prototype, but in a car that by rule could be bought from a Dodge dealer. Baker rolled back into the pits, helmet off, grinning like a man who had just walked on the moon. The timing sheet, now a piece of racing legend, confirmed what had been unthinkable just a year before. The number wasn't just a record, it was proof. Dodge's wild experiment had worked. Aerodynamics, not just raw horsepower, had unlocked a new frontier in speed. The Charger Daytona had shattered the limit, and every engineer, driver, and rival knew the game had changed forever. When the Charger Daytona finally rolled onto the track, the results were immediate and impossible to ignore. Richard Brickhouse took the green flag at the inaugural Talladega 500 on September 14, 1969, and crossed the finish line first, giving Dodge a win in the car's very first race. That victory was not a fluke. The Daytona's wild Aero package made it a force on the superspeedways, and the competition found themselves chasing taillights all season. The real avalanche hit in 1970. Bobby Isaac strapped into the bright red number 71 Daytona and started racking up wins like he was collecting trading cards. 11 victories in a single season, 13 pole positions, 38 top 10 finishes. Isaac's qualifying lap at Talladega clocked in at 199.658 miles per hour, just a hair shy of the mythical 200 miles per hour. The numbers tell the story. No other car in the field could touch the Daytona's blend of speed and stability. Ford and Mercury teams watched their early advantage evaporate as Dodge drivers rocketed past on the straightaways. Race after race, the Charger Daytona proved its worth not just as a one-hit wonder, but as a dominant weapon. The stats piled up, the win column filled. Trackside, the mood shifted from skepticism to awe. Dodge's gamble on radical aerodynamics had paid off, and the rest of the paddock scrambled to catch up. With every checkered flag, the pressure mounted, not just on rival teams, but on NASCAR itself. The Daytona had changed the game, and everyone knew it. But for now, the scoreboard belonged to Dodge. Today, automakers still chase speed records, but the Charger Daytona's lesson stands. Innovation can outpace convention overnight. In an era defined by wind tunnels and computers, it's easy to forget one wild idea once shattered the rules in the speedometer. The real legacy isn't the million-dollar price tag. It's the proof that radical thinking rewrites what's possible. Would you have dared to drive it? Let me know below.